Welcome back to the podcast. It's been several weeks now, but finally I have my dog back with me. So, welcome home, Monkey. She's finally back. Today, I want to talk to you guys about probably the most, I guess, special person, being, thing, dog that I've encountered in my entire life. And that was my dog, Monkey. And as you can probably see from her picture and from this box of her remains, Monkey passed away this year on January 27th of 2025. And so the last several weeks have been incredibly challenging for obvious reasons. As I think about this, I can't help but to think about Kirk Herbstreit. For those of you who know who Kirk is, he's an analyst on ESPN. Last year in November of 2024, Kirk lost his dog. His dog's name was Ben. And for those of you who follow College Game Day, Ben was a staple of that show. And he was always there at Kirk's side, traveling even on the road with him. And I remember when his dog, Ben, a golden retriever, passed in November of 2024. And I remember being sad about Ben's passing, but had no frame of reference because I'd never lost a dog. And I remember seeing Kirk on that episode just effectively devastated. I mean, not only was Kirk crying, we were all crying as Kirk tried to sort of get through the monologue and the script of that day. It was incredibly challenging. And I remember thinking at that time, my dog is getting a little bit older. I sure would like to do a podcast with Monkey here, sitting in this very chair that you see right now. And I found every excuse not to get Monkey in the studio. From Monkey can't walk very far. Her hips are bad. She won't sit still. Just a whole host of reasons. I remember, looking at my iPad that I have right now, and it's dated December 11th, 2024. And I have an entire script here, a script that I'd been working on for Monkey. And I just never got around to shooting the script. And now that I've lost Monkey, I wish I had not found every excuse not to have her in studio. I wanted to let her know and how special she was to me while she was still alive. And I've missed that opportunity because a month later she passed away. So I've been trying to figure out, how to even do today's episode. Certainly, I wanted to make sure that I had the remains of Monkey here with me. And after several weeks, I finally have her back with me. And so I'm very happy to at least have her home. It was very difficult to pick up the remains, but it was equally as difficult to put her down. Before I sort of get into how Monkey came into my life, I remember talking to a colleague of mine at work. A special shout out to Jerry. Jerry, you know who you are. And I remember talking to Jerry about Monkey and how Monkey was getting older and she was slowing down. And Jerry said to me, he said, it's really tough when you have to put a dog down. I had to do it, and he referenced putting one of his dogs down over a year ago. And I remember looking at him and saying, there's no way I'm ever putting my dog down. I said, it's just not going to happen. I said, I've got it all figured out. I said, Monkey's hips are failing, but I bought a cart for her. While she's 120 pounds, I'm relatively in shape. I can easily pick her up and take her out to use the bathroom whenever she needs to go. Box is checked. I said, Monkey has a number of medical issues. Her heart is failing. Her kidneys are failing. She's battling multiple urinary tract infections. She doesn't want to take her meds. No problem. I'll turn her on her back and I'll just put the meds down the back of her throat. I got that box checked. But the one box that I couldn't check is when Monkey decided she didn't want to eat or drink anymore. And that was heartbreaking because I couldn't force any amount of food or water down her throat without choking her or causing a major problem. And it was just so frustrating when you think you have it figured out how to keep your dog alive forever, and it just doesn't work. And after battling that for several days, we finally made the decision to put her down after about almost 24 hours or so of her just not drinking a single drop of water, not eating. She didn't even go to the bathroom. And I remember the night before I took her out, before we put her down, I took her outside several times, and I just laid her in the grass outside in the dead of night, 2:00 in the morning, and cold outside, and she would just collapse in the grass and not move. And I just could not believe that she had just given up the will at that point. And we made the decision. It was very challenging the next day to put her down, and we were with her at the vet's office, and I just couldn't believe what was happening. And ultimately, they were very gracious in how they put her down, and we got a chance to be with her during the process, and now she's back with us. But I want to spend the next, several minutes or so just talking about how amazing of a dog she was, because there are a lot of people who, have been asking me, when are you going to get another dog? And I can't even fathom getting another dog right now. Monkey was just such a special, I consider her a person. She was just such a special person. She was an amazing soul. And that's what I want to spend the rest of the time talking about. It was actually 2014, and I had just moved to Virginia, and I always wanted a dog growing up. Growing up in the big city, in a high rise, there were rules and restrictions of, you couldn't even have a dog. If you had a dog, the dog could only be a certain height and a certain weight. But for a number of reasons, I just always wanted a dog growing up. I never had a dog. I remember being in high school, and one of my good friends, Ryan Young, shout out to Ryan Young. I think he's a Hollywood stunt person now. And Ryan had a dog. His dog's name was Blaze. I mean, what an amazing dog. Blaze was a golden retriever. And I remember getting out of school. I was in high school at the time. And this is, 1995 or 96, somewhere in there. And I remember walking home with Ryan, not to study, not to play video games. I just wanted to take his dog on a walk. And I'm sure Ryan loved it because I would imagine at points he probably got tired of that. But I just loved taking his dog Blaze on a walk. And I know Blaze has crossed the Rainbow Bridge, and I hope Blaze is there playing with Monkey. But at that point, I knew that I wanted a dog, and I was just fascinated with retrievers. And Blaze was a golden retriever. Life in general, I just didn't have the opportunity to ever get a dog until 2014 when I moved to Virginia. And I remember knowing that I was going to be moving there and moving into an apartment. And I remember the apartment had restrictions on the type and the size of dog you could have. I think they said something like you couldn't have a dog over, 30 pounds. And I picked up Monkey from a group called Flat Rock Retrievers in, I think, Concord, Virginia. And I remember picking her up, and I mean, she was just bite size. I mean, she must have been, however big a 6-week-old dog is, maybe 5 pounds or so, 10 pounds, whatever it was. And I remember holding her in my hand and thinking oh, this is perfect. This is going to be a small dog. It's easily going to be, the 20 or 30 pound limit for the apartment. And I remember putting Monkey in my car in the back seat. And I remember driving, just thinking she would just sit back there. And I think just the sound of the engine of the car, I turned around and she was underneath the driver's seat. She somehow managed to get off the back seat and kind of shimmy her way into the driver's seat. And I remember pulling over on the side of the road as I was driving back to the apartment and trying to let her out in the grass and trying to figure out how to train a dog and how to navigate owning a dog. I finally got her back to the apartment, and we had a crate for her, but I remember thinking, I was like, well, I don't want to have her in the crate. I'm going to leave the crate open. And, of course, Monkey wasn't potty trained at the time. And I mean, there was mess all over the floor. And I remember, for those of you who follow the podcast, I'm in healthcare. And, I remember, having to go to work a lot. And at the time, my wife decided to work the night shift. So between she and I, one of us was always with Monkey. But there were times in which we both had to be gone. And I remember us thinking like, oh, we'll just leave water and food out. That way, she's well taken care of. And we would come back to the condo, and there would just be poop everywhere. I mean, the food would be picked through, the water would be spilled over. And I just had no concept that you can't just leave a newborn puppy dog like just endless supply of food and water. And so we learned over time how to how to sort of navigate that. Being first time dog parents, we would do anything to make Monkey happy. And I knew she loved human food early on just as much as I did. And that was reflected in her weight. I remember taking her to the local pet vet. It was called Banfield through PetSmart. And we would take her there, and there was one employee or trainer. Her name was Tony. I'll never forget Tony. Tony, if you're watching, I'm sorry I didn't listen to your advice. But Tony would always tell us, like, your dog's a little bit overweight. You got to stop feeding her. And I'm like, well, who of us isn't overweight a little bit? And I knew that if Monkey liked Chick-fil-A, far be it from me to stand in her way of having Chick-fil-A. So instead of listening to Tony's advice, I just stopped going to Tony and Banfield and PetSmart altogether, and I kept going to Chick-fil-A, and Monkey loved it. But Monkey was special during that sort of period of being in Virginia. She proved that she was a tank in so many respects. Early on, I knew that she loved water. I mean, she was a retriever, but we would put her in just the most precarious situations. Raging rivers, massive lakes. And I mean, she just held her own. I mean, she was just an Olympian swimmer. And I love water activities. So Monkey and I were we were meant to be. I remember one thing in particular. I remember when I was in my residency in Virginia, we always had an annual pig roast. And we get a whole pig and put it on a spit and kind of just rotisserie it. Some years were better than others, but I remember one year we had we had a rotisserie pig, and we decided to rotisserie the pig on an open spit. And that's just the worst idea. For those of you who have ever tried to rotisserie a pig, you know that it should be in an enclosed setting. Well, needless to say, that pig was not healthy. And we took the pig off of the spit, and we sliced it. We prepared it, and needless to say, I think that year that pig may have wiped out the entire residency program. I mean, the level of E. coli and bacteria that those residents ingested that year from that uncooked pig, I mean, it probably would have wiped out an entire country. But the one person and the one thing it did not wipe out was Monkey. To this day, I have no idea what her gut biome is, but she was able to eat just about every drop of that pig I put in front of her, and she did just fine. So I knew at that point she was cut from a different cloth, and so that was a really fun story. When Monkey was a puppy early on, we would take her by my good friend Nick's house. Nick, if you're watching, Nick LeBlanc, he's a thoracic surgeon in Louisiana. But Nick had a dog, Chloe. Now, at the time, Monkey is a year old or so, and she's still pretty small. And I remember looking at Nick's dog, Chloe, and thinking, my gosh, Nick, that's a huge dog that you have. And Nick would look at me and say, your dog's going to be even bigger. And before we left Virginia, I think when Monkey was 2, I think the last I looked at the scale, she was 100 pounds at 2 years of age. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that was Chick-fil-A, but I knew that this was going to be a much bigger dog. As we closed out the Virginia chapter, the next phase on Monkey's timeline was the move to Texas. At that time, I completed my residency training, and I moved into fellowship training in another part of surgery, and so life for me was getting a little bit better as sort of I advanced through training, and as my life got better, Monkey's life got her life got better as well. We decided at that point that Monkey loved being in the water, and we wanted to be in the water with her, but she would never stay just at the shoreline. She was always swimming out, 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards. And so we decided at that point we needed to get a paddle board for her. Well, really for us, so we could be in the water with her. And from the moment we got those paddle boards, I don't think we ever touched down at shore again. We were always out in the lake or the ocean or wherever we were. And Monkey was always with us. And so that was a lot of fun. I noticed, though, that as the more we fed Monkey Chick-fil-A and all the other things, the easier she seemed to float in the water. And I don't know if there's a correlation there or not, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I would look out a lot of times, and she wouldn't even be moving her paws. She would just be floating, almost like oil floats on water. And but she loved being out there. One of the things I remember the most about my time in Texas is there were always these like meetings that I would have to go to, whether they were journal clubs or other things, and they would always be associated with a dinner. But I knew how much Monkey loved steak, and so what I would do is I would go to these various dinners and shout out to Art Membralia, shout out to Joe Guerrero, Eric Fowler, all the guys that we worked with. And they would put on these amazing fancy dinners, and you would kind of get as a guest or an attendee, you would get your dinner for the night. And I would always I'm a big dessert fan for those of you who know me, and so the waiters would come around and take the various orders, and I would always give my order, but I would always ask the waiter to bring out the dessert because I love dessert, specifically key lime pie, but that's another story. And the waiters always say, you don't want your meal? And I say, no, just package the steak up, bring me the dessert. And so it was always like a running joke because I would be at dinner, everybody else is eating, whatever their entree is, and I would just be eating dessert and ice cream. And people say, well, what are you doing with that steak? And I would always say, it's got to go home to Monkey. And so I would always bring these amazing steaks home to Monkey, and we would create like these little videos of her eating it. And I'm sure as I hearken back to my time in Virginia, I'm sure Tony was probably cringing watching me feed my dog this stuff, but Monkey absolutely loved it. There was this one steakhouse in Texas called Perry's, and they're notorious for this like 5-slab pork chop they have. And I remember bringing that home to Monkey, and I tried eating that once in my life and could barely make it through it. And I mean, Monkey just absolutely crushed it, and that was one of her favorites. And so I think just about every steakhouse in Texas, Monkey has had it, and not just sampled it, but actually eaten the whole damn steak, and she loved it. I think she loved that just as much as she loved Chick-fil-A. But her time there was not without difficulties. One of the craziest stories I remember. We had a backyard that had like a wrought iron gate that went around it. And for those of you that have been to Texas, and specifically San Antonio, Texas, you know that just about every animal there, insect there, is designed to kill you. I don't know how many times I went to the garage and there were scorpions there, black widows. And I mean, it's just, you got to have thick skin to survive in San Antonio. But I remember we created a doggy door in our slider that led out to the backyard. And I remember just sitting on the couch. We were on the couch one night just watching TV, and we could always hear Monkey come in and out. And we were watching TV, and I was like, "Do you smell that?" And my wife is like, "Yeah, I do." And like we looked at each other, and Amelia was like, "Skunk!" And we turned around. Monkey's like coming around. She could barely even keep her eyes on it. It's like she was just tearing up. And I mean, there must have been a whole clan of skunks that just doused her. And I remember that night, as a fellow in plastic surgery, I mean, the call is can be pretty challenging. And I remember always wanting to be in bed at a certain hour so I'd be like refreshed the next day. Well, this night that didn't happen. We must have given Monkey, I don't know, 4 or 5 baths from Dawn soap, tomato juice. I mean, you name it. And every time we would finish the bath, I mean, we'd be like, okay, great. I think we got it. And we would dry Monkey off. We put her on the couch. And I mean, it wouldn't be 5 minutes later. I'm like, where the smell is still there, back in the bathtub. I mean, just, wash, rinse, repeat. And I think it must have been a month or two later before that scent finally went away, because she's a water dog. And every time she get back in the water, the smell, the stench of the skunk just came back. But she got through that somehow, and I think was the stronger for it. One of the things she loved to do in that same backyard, we would always feed the deer that were in the area. We kind of backed up to this forest, and us along with our neighbor, we would always vie for like how many deer we could get to our backyard. I think our neighbor was like throwing tortilla chips out at him. We were throwing like oranges, apples, and tortilla chips, trying to get the most deer to come by us, because Monkey loved to eat deer meat. And so I thought it would be cool if she actually saw the animals that she was eating. And so we get the deer to come up to the yard, and she would just absolutely go nuts, just barking at them. Now, the thing about it is that if Monkey ever got close to the deer, she would do nothing. I mean, she's used to eating food served on a platter with a knife and a fork. If she has to kill her own food, she's not going to do it. But she just hated seeing the deer so close to our yard. I think she was always worried, because she's like, "Why are you giving them the food and not giving me the food?" And but she always liked or seemed like she liked having them around. One of the coolest stories, I think, when we were in San Antonio, it may have been when we were in Virginia. We took a road trip to Philadelphia, and this is really cool. So this must have been 2015 or 2016, in that range. We took a road trip to Philadelphia, city of brotherly love. Shout out to the Super Bowl champions from 2025. And we decided to go to the Liberty Bell. Now, don't ask me how this happened, but we parked the car, we got Monkey out, and somehow I ended up getting like a service dog vest. I think probably off Amazon. You can buy these pretty easily. And so I had this service dog vest that I got from Monkey when she was about a year old. And granted, at this time, she's about 100 or so pounds heavier. And so this thing barely fit. For those of you who have ever seen this movie, Tommy Boy, you know what it looks like when you're trying to fit a dog or a person into a jacket that doesn't fit. But we decided to go to the Liberty Bell, right? The Liberty Bell. And so we get to the Liberty Bell. There's a line. I remember us being in the line. There were a bunch of Clydesdales. Monkey spent the whole time barking at the Clydesdales. But we got to the Liberty Bell, and Monkey's got her service dog vest on. And I'm assuming this is national security or Secret Service, whoever it was. It's like looking at us like, this dog can't come in. And I remember talking to my wife before we went in. I said, "Look, just keep your game face. We're going to get in to see the Liberty Bell." And I said, "Sure she can. She's a service dog." And they looked at Monkey, and Monkey really, for those of you who remember Monkey when she's alive, she clearly was not a service dog. She's well overweight. She always wants food, and she always wants to play with kids. But nevertheless, for this one moment in time, Monkey appeared well behaved. And so the guy looked at Monkey, looked at me, looked at Monkey, looked at my wife, and said, "Okay, you guys can go in." And I remember thinking, like, Monkey is going to knock over this Liberty Bell if she gets anywhere close to it. And we were able to get just close enough to take a photo at the Liberty Bell. And I said, wow. I said, if anybody could pull this off, only Monkey could do it. And so that was really cool. But, ultimately, our time in Texas came to a close. We had a lot of great memories there. We spent a lot of time swimming. I remember must have been 2018. There was a big thing in Austin, Texas, on Lady Bird Lake. There was what's called blue-green algae, and some of you who sort of follow this may be aware that when the blue-green algae when the temperatures fluctuate, the algae gets out of control. But Monkey always swam in Lady Bird Lake. For those of you who look it up, it's sort of a water hole in Austin, Texas, and she would always swim there. And But that year, the algae was just out of control, and several dogs lost their lives because of ingestion of the water that was contaminated. And I remember us being so freaked out because Monkey had swam in that water, but she didn't even show any signs of slowing down or sickness. And that was just another cue to me. I was like, this dog is just, the DNA is a little bit different in this dog, and things that would cause significant harm for other dogs, somehow it just never bothered her. And so she was just she was a trooper. But ultimately, we moved back to Illinois towards the end of Monkey's life in 2019, and by that time she was 5 years old, going on 6. And for dogs that are over, I think, 100 pounds, I don't know that they age the same as other dogs. We always heard that, dogs, a year in a human's life is 7 in a dog's life, but I think for older breeds it may be a little bit more. And as we moved to Illinois, she started showing signs of slowing down a little bit. We always knew that she just didn't walk normally. Even when she was a puppy, she would kind of run sideways. We sort of first got wind that she may have this hip dysplasia. But I mean, we kept her swimming in Lake Michigan, and always sort of worked on her fitness and trying to keep her relatively healthy, considering all the fast food that she liked to eat. And by fast food, I mean just Chick-fil-A. Not that that's any better. But she started battling multiple UTIs, and every time we were able to get her over the UTIs, and she showed signs of kind of being even stronger. She always behaved normally. I mean, she would lay outside in the dead of winter in the snow. In the summer, she was always swimming in the lake. And by swimming, for those of you that have been to the Chicagoland area and sort of stood at the shoreline, what you'll see in the distance, you'll see these white buoys. Usually they're anywhere between 300 to 500 yards out in the distance. And I remember not only just looking at those buoys, but with Monkey on our paddle boards, we would actually paddleboard out to the buoys, and Monkey would be right along with us, just swimming out there. I remember people just being amazed that Monkey could swim that far. I mean, like I said, she was just she was a fish to water. One of the coolest things that Monkey would always do is she loved to dive, and this is a really cool feature of Monkey. Early on, when she was a puppy, we would throw some of her favorite toys just in the water, not realizing that some of the toys float, other toys they just don't float. And but Monkey's favorite toy, I remember, sank to the bottom of this river in Virginia, and I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I got to go get it." And before I knew it, Monkey had turned her nose down and had just gone underwater and was retrieving the toy. I mean, we were standing at the shoreline. We just couldn't believe it. We're like, this dog actually just dove, granted it was 2 or 3 feet, to get this toy. But she continued to perfect her craft, and at various points, even diving like 10 feet underwater. I mean, I've got one video that I have to show, and it's of Monkey with a GoPro camera on her back and me filming her as she dove, 10 feet underwater for about 20 seconds or so to retrieve a toy. And it was just one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. But she would even do this in Lake Michigan. And so she was always very strong in the water. But over time, as she continued to age, she just gradually showed signs of weakening. At times, her hips would go out just in the middle of walking. And she never appeared to be in pain, almost like confused, like, what, why did I just collapse? And we always took amazing care of Monkey. I don't think there was any day in Monkey's life in which she didn't sleep with us in bed. I mean, it was, there would be points in which, I would get in the bed, and if my wife was late to get in bed, it's like, look, Monkey's right here. You got to sleep on the couch or someplace else. I mean, the rule was nobody could move Monkey. If she was on my side, I just wasn't sleeping in the bed that night, and vice versa. And so she always enjoyed sleeping on the bed, but it took her walking to the bed and sort of climbing up to get in the bed to do that. And as she got older, she elected to spend a lot of her time sleeping on the couch instead of going to bed. and at points she showed signs of her appetite slowing down. She loved deer meat, and as she got older and her health began to fade a bit more, those are some of the things that she showed less interest in. I feel like as she got older, her appetite for various treats and food began to wane, and the balance shifted to sort of more medications. I felt like I was giving her less treats and more medications. She had a few stints in the ICU at the University Hospital, and she appeared to get through those fine, albeit a little bit weaker each time. But the last time she had a really bad urine infection, and some of the medications were just too strong for her to handle, and ultimately her appetite began to fade, and she it was clear that this time, unlike the others, she wasn't going to get through this one, and that was a really tough experience to to not be able to get your dog through through that type of problem. So ultimately, I think Monkey had an amazing life. Many of my friends knew Monkey. She was a staple in the house. You couldn't, if you didn't like dogs, you just weren't coming to our house, and that's just how it was. Whether it were Christmas parties or summer parties, Monkey was always a staple. I remember my mother coming to visit once and looking as Monkey laid on the couch right next to her, and we didn't grow up with a dog, and my mother quipped, you let your dog on the couch. And I just kind of looked at her. I said, you just got here, Mom. There's no sense in leaving so soon. So Monkey stayed on the couch, and I know she'll be missed by myself and my wife, my mother, and all of our friends. But I hope as we sort of go through the grieving process, I keep holding on to the hope that I'll see Monkey again one day on the other side, and I hope that it's all peaceful. I always wonder what it's like on the other side if when Monkey crosses over, if someone in heaven goes to the kennel or wherever the dogs go and picks out my dog. So I hope whoever that does takes excellent care of her, but I hope they also know it's only temporary, and that when I get there, there's no sense in us getting kicked out of heaven. Just give me my dog back. So I'm going to close this episode, but I just wanted to take a few moments to update everyone who tunes into the podcast or even social media, to let you know kind of why there's been a little bit of a gap, and to share with you why I thought Monkey was so special. My wife has done an amazing job of chronicling Monkey's life through video and photos on Instagram and in social media, and we plan to keep that going. Her memory is not gonna go away just because physically she has. She'll always be with us. And so for those of you who are interested in seeing who Monkey was, you can certainly log into monkey _ chocolate on Instagram, and you can see some of the amazing videos that we've taken and photos that we've taken of her over the years. I haven't discussed half of it. Other stories, such as our trip to Canada, in which we somehow smuggled drinks and food back into the States, and Border Patrol didn't notice because Monkey jumped out, and they were so busy petting the dog they forgot to inspect the car. Or other amazing stories that we have. I'm probably leaving a lot of stuff out, but again, I just want to say, without being long-winded, thank you guys for tuning in. For those of you new Monkey, thank you for being a part of her life and in my life as well. And I hope that for those of you that have loved ones and even loved pets that you care about, take an extra moment to tell that person or that pet how much you love them and cherish them, because you never know when you're not going to have them. So I certainly wish that I was frustrated with giving my dog pills now or taking her on her walk. the things that I complained about before, I wish I had those complaints right now. I wish I had my dog back. So until the next episode, thank you guys for tuning in. Yeah, peace.
I fell apart 1,000 times. I'm tired of thinking it's raining, but something in your eyes is shining on me. You say it's time to let go. I say, where you going with my heart? I'm so afraid of getting lost. Tell me where you going with my heart. I say, where you going? Where you going? Where you going with my heart?
Could have been dreaming. It always felt so real till I woke up and lost all meaning. You said things I want to trust. I said, where you going with my heart?